Hey there everybody, how you doing? I am Francis and welcome to part 2 of this challenge. If you missed part 1 of this challenge, I highly recommend that you go watch that first. Now with that being said, let's return to the challenge, shall we? So with Sonic's story out of the way, we can now move on to Tails' story. Tails' story begins with a fight with the Egg Hornet, which we already established that Amy can defeat. So we can skip this and move on to our first stage, which is Windy Valley. Now if you guys remember, Tails' stages in Sonic Adventure is racing Sonic. You would think Sonic being the fastest thing alive and Amy lacking Tails' flying ability or speed for that matter, that this would be impossible, right? Well, that's not the case at all. Remember that Amy's been practicing for years to keep up with Sonic. Also, if Sonic gets too far ahead of you, he stops and waits for you to catch up. Windy Valley for the most part isn't too difficult for Amy. She can still use the green loops that Tails could use to take shortcuts. The only thing Amy can't do is this part here with the spring for the same reason we established in Sonic's story. So we had to unfortunately switch out for that part, unfortunately. But besides that one spring, Amy can outrun Sonic in Windy Valley, no problem. Which this takes us to Casino Opolis, which is the sewer section that you wind up in if you fail the pinball table with less than 50 rings. And once again, this is for the most part no problem for Amy. The only part that was a problem was the beginning ramp. It'll take time, but just keep jumping and Amy will eventually reach the top. Since Amy is a lightweight, these fans lift her a lot faster than they lifted Tails, or Sonic for that matter. There really isn't much else to say here, so we'll just move on to the next stage. So this brings us to Ice Cap, which I unfortunately wasn't able to pull this off as Amy. So Ice Cap as Tails is a snowboarding section, so I did what I did in Sonic's story with constantly doing flip jumps, but I couldn't beat Sonic to the Chaos Emerald. I tried this 5 times, and every time I was about at the halfway point of the stage by the time Sonic made it to the end. I guess unlike the other stages, Sonic doesn't wait for you here, so that's very disappointing. Up next is the fight with Knuckles, Chaos 4, and the Sky Chase, which nothing is different from Sonic's story, so we can skip all 3 of these. Moving on to Sandhill, which is possible as Amy. We just have to put with this camera because this is how the camera operates when you're supposed to be riding a board. Sky Chase Act 2, nothing to see here, we can skip this. And from here we return to my least favorite stage, Sky Dash. But for Tails it's only the first section, so thank goodness for that. Just like in Sonic's story, we get launched onto a pillar. Amy can't grab it like Sonic and Tails can, but she can walk on a little ledge. There really isn't too much to talk about here. For the most part, it is just business as usual. Do it as you did in the last story. There isn't really too much else to talk about, so we're just going to skip to the end of the stage and move on. Just like in Sonic's story, Amy can beat Gamma, but like every other character battle in this challenge, the game crashed. Up next is Speed Highway, which is the final stage of Tails' story where you race Dr. Eggman instead of Sonic, and unlike Sonic, Eggman won't wait for you if you fall behind. The first half of Speed Highway, Amy can do no problem. Since Amy is a lightweight, she can use the speed booster rings no problem at all. This section, however, is when you have the first problem. Since the helicopter is gone, you have to fly to the speed booster, but Amy, as you guys know, isn't capable of flying, therefore she cannot reach it. I even tried to guide Amy towards them as the springs launched her straight into the atmosphere, and no luck, it's not happening. So I had no choice but to use Tails to cross this gap. Thank goodness there was a checkpoint here because I didn't want to start all the way from the beginning again. Also, since Eggman is not like Sonic and won't wait for you, if he gets too far ahead, which he kinda did here, you can just die, which will reset Eggman's location to the checkpoint you just touched. Anyways, there's a building down here you can jump to as Amy. She can't reach those speed boosters, but there's another building you can jump down to, where Amy can continue from until you land on this building, and you find another speed booster that Amy can't reach. So once again, we gotta go with Tails to get across. Anyways, after that, we take this rocket, which leads us to the next checkpoint, which is a good thing because Eggman was dangerously close to the missile, so I jumped off the cliff, taking a life to reset Eggman. Unfortunately, from this part of the stage forward, there isn't much Amy can do since this stage really caters to Tails and his flying abilities, and I cannot stress this enough that Amy does not have those flying abilities. So I used Tails Tails to fly to one of these platforms, and I switched back to Amy here to see if she can finish the stage from here. I made it this far into the stage, and then Eggman beat me to the goddamn missile, and something that crushed my very soul happened here. Apparently, checkpoints are irrelevant when you lose the race and you have to start all the way over from the beginning of the stage. I was livid when I saw this. So I flew his Tails to the end and switched to Amy to make the final jump, and she couldn't even do that either. I really didn't want to start over again, so I just switched back to Tails and I finished the level as Tails. So with that being said, Speed Highway is about 50% possible as Amy. This brings us to the Egg Walker, which is the final boss of Tails' story, and yeah, Amy can do this, no problem. You use your hammer on his foot he stomps, and then you do a jumping hammer attack to hit the Eggman. The final hit can be a bit tricky since you gotta be fast to hit all of the feet, and as you guys know, Amy lacks speed, but it is possible. And that concludes Tails' story, and now we can move on to the next story, which is Knuckles' story, which begins in a Dawn Avenue section of Speed Highway. How possible Knuckles' stages are as Amy is all based on luck of the draw, because remember how in Sonic Adventure 2, in the treasure hunting stages, if we couldn't get an emerald, we just threw a life and respawned the emeralds somewhere else? Well, you can't do that in Sonic Adventure 1. If you die, the emeralds don't relocate. They stay where they were. The only way you can relocate the emeralds is if you exit the stage and re-enter. The first thing I noticed about Amy in the treasure hunting stages is that she has this high-pitched noise for the Emerald Radar, which was the most annoying sound I have ever heard. The first emerald piece was out there in the open, which I could easily reach thanks to this spring, and that was the only emerald I could grab as Amy. The second emerald was inside this thing, and I learned something interesting about these things. Amy can't smash it. In fact, nobody can smash it except for Knuckles. Only Knuckles can smash these things. I tried using every character, and nothing. Although I did notice that all the other characters also had a different noise for the Emerald Radar, so that's really interesting. So because of that, I had to bite the bullet and smash it as Knuckles, and the last emerald piece was way up here. I tried so hard, but there was no way for Amy to get up here. So I once again bit the bullet, I switched to Knuckles, climbed the wall, and then I switched back to Amy to claim the reward, just so that Amy could say I at least got the emerald. So far the treasure hunting stages are off to a poor start for Amy. But her luck is about to change because next is Casino Opolis, and we had a lot better luck here than we did in Speed Highway. The first emerald was inside this robot, the second emerald was in this fountain, and the last emerald was a little bit tricky to get. It located in a secret area where you had to enter by hitting the switch, but Amy can't just climb up here like Knuckles can, but there was a way. As you know, Amy gets incredible height from springs due to being a lightweight, so this spring can bounce you onto the pirate ships. Then there's this other spring on a ship to reach the top of the mast. From here you can jump to the other ship, and from here you can use the walkway and jump off to where the secret area is. So Casino Opolis was 100% possible as Amy. We never had to switch out. Up next is the battle with Chaos 2, which is a Knuckles exclusive boss, and Amy has a rather interesting time with Chaos 2. Whenever Amy gets too close to Chaos 2, he goes into a shielding state and he won't stop shielding as long as you are close to him. So the secret to Chaos 2 as Amy is to wait until he attacks and then wallop him in the head with the hammer because he can't defend while he is in his attacking pose. Just do that a few times and Chaos 2 will be no more. Knuckles' Red Mountain involves a lot of going up and down, and just like the other Knuckles stages, it really depends on the luck of the draw on how possible or impossible this is for Amy. A cool thing about Amy in this stage is that since she is a lightweight, there is a gust of wind that will blow her upward, giving her some recovery time. This wind is very similar to the wind you see in Pumpkin Hill in Sonic Adventure 2, and it won't save you a second time if you don't reach ground on the way down. Anyways, the first emerald piece I unfortunately had to switch to Knuckles to get since it was underground, and since this is the level where you get introduced to the Shovel Claw, I'm assuming that just like in Pumpkin Hill and Sonic Adventure 2, I'm guessing at least one emerald piece will always be underground. The second emerald was on this ledge that Amy can reach thanks to that wind that I told you about earlier. And the last emerald piece was up here which Amy can't get to, so we had to finish the stage as Knuckles. So the Sonic guys were not exactly smiling upon Amy. Next is the battle with Sonic and Chaos 4. We already know Amy can do these, so we can skip these without talking about these. This brings us to Lost World, and once again, how possible these stages are depends on the luck of the draw, and Amy had the worst luck you could ask for when it came to Lost World. So the first emerald piece was on top of this thing. Amy could reach the roof, but she couldn't get to the top where the emerald, so I ended up doing that as Tails. The second emerald was buried, so we had to switch to Knuckles, and the final emerald was up here, which was impossible for Amy to reach. So we once again switched to Knuckles. Boy, Amy had the worst luck when it came to Lost World. She couldn't get a single emerald here. Moving on to Sky Deck, God help me. So I learned something interesting about this stage. When you are not playing as Knuckles, this stage tilts on its own, so I start the stage dropping all the way to the bottom due to the self-tilt. The first emerald piece was in one of these areas dumping garbage on you. The second emerald piece, I never noticed picking it up honestly, I just suddenly just had it. Watching this footage back, I sort of just got it after this robot shocked me. Maybe it was in this robot? I don't really know. And the final emerald piece was up here. I had no luck reaching here as Amy, so I just got it as Knuckles after 30 minutes of trying to get up there. Thank God we're done here. I hate Sky Deck. I'm not going to talk about this anymore. We're just going to move on. And that pretty much wraps up Knuckles' story, since all that is left is the battle with Chaos 6. Besides a few sections of the floor being broken, this is no different from Sonic's story, so we can skip this and move on to the next story. The next story happens to be Amy's story. We're just going to skip this because, well, obviously Amy can beat her own story. This moves us on to Big Story, and Big Story is an interesting case. You would think that this is impossible as anyone who isn't big, since this story is a fishing minigame, right? Well, that's not the case. Once you switch to somebody who isn't big, Froggy is no longer a fish. He is actually one of those animals trapped in a green bubble, so you can just jump into the water and grab him. There were only 2 sections of Big Story that Amy couldn't do. Ice Cap, only Big can chuck those rocks to smash the ice, and Amy can't do anything at all against Chaos 6. That has to be done as Big. Besides those 2 things though, Big Story was the easiest part of this challenge, no question. Now we move on to the last character, E102 Gamma. Ironically, Gamma's first stage is Final Egg, which is Gamma's tutorial stage. There's only 2 enemies, so there's nothing really too challenging here, until you reach the end, that is. There's an invisible wall protecting the Sonic doll, so Amy can't destroy it. You have to use Gamma's Vulcan to destroy it. I did notice a spring that I never noticed during a normal playthrough and saw a platform up above, so I spent some time trying to land on it to see if I could use this to help any. I used Tails to get up here, and all I found was an unlimited supply of Tails dolls, so this section of the stage is cursed. So there's no alternative, we have to use Gamma to destroy the dolls, so Final Egg is not possible as Amy. Gamma's story is off to a bit of a bad start. From here we battle Gamma's brother Beta, and yeah, Amy can fight Beta no problem. There's honestly not too much to say about this fight, so let's just move on. Which this brings us to Emerald Beach, which is the first half of Emerald Beach that we explored as Sonic, so we can grab Froggy with no problem. What more can I say, honestly? Next is the battle with Sonic, which we already know Amy can do, and this was surprisingly the first and only character battle where the game didn't crash for Amy. Moving on to Windy Valley, which is no problem for Amy. Unlike in Sonic Adventure 2, Amy can actually destroy the dynamite packs with her hammer. In fact, I'm pretty sure any character can destroy the dynamite packs. The rest of Windy Valley is business as normal, there isn't really too much to talk about. We can reach Delta no problem, and just like Beta, Amy can take down Delta no problem. Red Mountain was the first stage in Gamma's story that challenged Amy. So for the most part, it is business as normal, running through a volcano without a care in the world, until we get to this boulder covered in dynamite packs. As we established earlier, Amy can destroy the dynamite packs, but there was one dynamite pack that Amy couldn't destroy, and oddly, Amy made a Gamma beeping noise as she died. I don't know what that was about, but I felt like it was worth sharing. Anyways, on my second attempt, I learned I didn't have to destroy any of the dynamite packs on that boulder. I can nail the boulder with a flip jump and just go around it and continue on my way. This part, there is no safe way to cross it. You'll have to take some hits and just power your way through the lava. This rock, interestingly, has no collision, so you can just phase through it. Not that it does me any good since I just died. After a couple of attempts, I made it around and took down Epsilon, finishing Red Mountain. This brings us on to Gamma's final stage, Hot Shelter, which is also the longest stage in Gamma's story. Hot Shelter starts off business as normal, destroy all enemies inside, destroy the dynamite packs, and wander into the stage. This part with the gears is terrifying. You have to jump and reach for the ladder. I caught onto this ladder at the very last second. I was almost certain I was going to die here. Since the spring launches Amy extremely high, you don't have to worry about these boxes and just go right over them. From here, it is business as normal once again until you reach this part with the crane. Normally as Gamma, you shoot the switch and let the crane grab you. As Amy, you gotta press the button and run back fast enough so the crane can grab you. I know this is possible as Sonic, but I just couldn't do it as Amy, so I switched to Gamma to do it the intended way. The high-speed cargo station section was up next, and this was extremely stressful. Everything outside of the speed station is treated as water, so if you fall, you'll find yourself falling for all eternity. I'm guessing they didn't bother to put in a death point because it's not needed since, Gamma floats over water. Luckily though, unlike Sonic Adventure 2, restarting takes you to the last checkpoint instead of the beginning, so I'm very thankful for that. The monkeys also made this extremely annoying, but if you are careful and take your time, you should be able to make it. After that, you should have no more problems until you reach Zeta. Zeta though, unlike the RE series robots, has been upgraded into a turret, and you need a Vulcan cannon to reach him, and as you guys know, Amy doesn't have a Vulcan cannon, so we have no choice but to switch to Gamma to do this. This brings us to the final battle with Beta Mark II. This battle is possible as Amy and is a surprisingly fun battle. So just like with Gamma, he'll dodge and block everything. Your only opening to attack is after he attacks, kind of like Chaos 2 did. But unlike Chaos 2, you gotta be quick because the opening to attack is very small. You can destroy his missiles with your hammer, and when he goes up high to shoot energy beams at you, as long as you run and jump, you should be okay. The final hit, he usually fires missiles the same time he tackles you. I find it easier just to take the hit so you can finish him off. And that is the end of Gamma's story. Besides Final Egg and a battle with Zeta, Amy could do it all on her own. Good job, Amy, I'm proud of you. And that, unfortunately, is where our challenge ends because all that is left is the Supersonic battle with Chaos, and this is impossible because after a few seconds, you just die. I tried this with every character and the same thing happened except for Metal Sonic, surprisingly. The game reads Metal Sonic as Supersonic, so you can actually fight Perfect Chaos as Metal Sonic. I don't know if it's doable though since the game crashed on me. Maybe that'll be our next challenge. But yeah, every character besides Supersonic, you load into the stage and after a few seconds, you just die. So with all that being said, that concludes our little challenge, and honestly, I'm surprised how much Amy was able to do on her own. If this doesn't impress Sonic, nothing will. Either way, I hope you guys enjoyed this. Thank you so much for joining me. Expect more challenges like this in the future, and I'll see you guys next time. But until then, have a nice day. Bye, everybody.